What if the biggest problem of retirement is not how much money you have, but where you are living? Many Americans are realizing that even after a lifetime of work, their pensions and Social Security are still being eroded by expensive housing, costly health care, and an ever heavier cost of living. From that realization, a quiet shift has begun. Instead of trying to earn more money, retired Americans are starting to look for places where money stops controlling their lives. And what is shocking is this. In some countries, $400, $600 a month is still enough for a calm, dignified life, not by cutting back, but by living in line with real needs. Today's article is about places like that, where retirement is no longer a financial equation, but a phase of slowing down and living more lightly. Dream it. Pack it. Go. 5. Nicaragua. Matagalpa, living enough, living slow, living real. Nicaragua is not a place that overwhelms you from day one. It has no flashy resorts, does not market itself as a retirement paradise, and does not try to prove that it is wealthy. But it is precisely that quietness that causes many retired Americans to stay longer than planned. Tucked away in the northern highlands, Matagalpa represents a Nicaragua that is simple, modest, and quietly sufficient, in a way many Americans have lost after years of living under constant cost pressure. Matagalpa is not a tourist hub, so life here does not revolve around the needs of outsiders. Small streets, local cafes, and morning markets exist first and foremost to serve local residents. Americans who choose to live here are usually not looking for Western-style conveniences, but for a rhythm of life that can be sustained long-term without anxiety every time they check their bank account. For them, living within a budget of around $400 a month is not a challenge, but a conscious choice. Housing in Matagalpa reflects that same spirit. Small houses or basic apartments, often located outside the center, offer enough privacy and quiet. The spaces are not large but are airy, often facing greenery. The mild year-round climate makes life comfortable without air conditioning, a small detail with a large impact on costs. Electricity, water, and internet are not as flawless as in the US, but they are stable enough for everyday living. Eating in Matagalpa is more about adjusting habits than indulging in luxury. Local markets open early in the morning, where vegetables, fruit, meat, and fish are sold at prices that many Americans initially find hard to believe. Around 10-15 USD is enough for several days of fresh food. With monthly food costs typically around 180-220 USD, the total living budget for many retirees stays around 400-650 USD for a low-stress life. Not because Nicaragua has some special secret, but because life here forces people to eat more slowly and listen to their bodies more closely. As for healthcare, Matagalpa suits older adults with stable health. Private clinics meet common needs such as routine checkups, blood pressure, or diabetes care, at costs low enough that many people choose to pay out of pocket. When more complex treatment is needed, Managua remains within reasonable reach. Most importantly, there is a sense of control over healthcare costs, something many Americans no longer feel they have back home. Safety in Matagalpa comes from its small community structure. People recognize each other, greet one another daily, and foreigners who live quietly are quickly seen as part of the neighborhood. Of course, life here is not perfect. Internet can be slow at times, and electricity may be unstable during the rainy season. But those very limitations force people to learn patience and slow down. The nature surrounding Matagalpa is a major reason many people decide to stay. Hills, forests, and coffee plantations create a green, cool, and peaceful environment. Not overwhelming, but something that slowly sinks in over time. Ultimately, what makes Matagalpa different is not the number $400, but the feeling of enough. Enough quiet to hear birds in the morning, enough simplicity to avoid being pulled into consumer cycles, and enough human connection to still feel part of a community. This is not a place that makes you richer, but it can make your life feel significantly lighter. And sometimes, at this stage of life, that lightness is the greatest luxury. 4. Paraguay is often mentioned through a very small, very ordinary story. An American couple in their early 60s once shared that they came to Asunción with the intention of staying only a few weeks just to see. On their first morning, they walked to a corner cafe, ordered 2 milk coffees and local cornbread. When it came time to pay, the husband thought he had misheard the amount. Not because it was absurdly cheap, but because it felt familiar, like prices in the United States 3 or 4 decades ago. They did not decide to stay that day, but from that moment on, Paraguay began to stay in their thoughts. Paraguay does not try to impress. The country rarely appears on lists of retirement paradises, does not promote itself loudly, and does not build a flashy image. But that very quietness has become its strength. For many retired Americans, Paraguay offers the feeling of living in a society that has not been pushed to overload by consumerism, mass tourism, or constant competitive pressure. Life here moves at a very different pace. In quiet residential neighborhoods of Asunción or riverside towns like Encarnación, days pass slowly and evenly. People spend more time with family, shared meals, and long conversations. At first, newcomers may find the atmosphere empty, but later it feels light. Light because there is no pressure to spend money just to keep up with the rhythm around them. The cost of living in Paraguay is low enough to create a sense of security without feeling like sacrifice. Housing is spacious, simple, and does not come with hidden expenses. Local food, meat, vegetables, fruit, is fresh and inexpensive, often bought at markets rather than large supermarkets. When basic living costs are added up, many couples realize that around $1,200 USD per month is enough for a stable life, with rent accounting for roughly $300–500 USD, and daily food costs significantly lower than in the United States. More importantly, they no longer have to constantly monitor their bank accounts with a defensive mindset. Healthcare in Paraguay is not what draws people in, but it is rarely what makes them leave. The public system covers basic needs, while private healthcare is affordable and comes with short waiting times. Medical visits do not carry the stress of looming bills. Many Americans choose simple private insurance, sufficient to access good hospitals in Asunción. Paraguay suits those with relatively stable health who see medical care as part of everyday life, not a financial battle. In terms of safety, Paraguay is much quieter than the common image of South America. Security issues are mostly limited to petty crime in crowded areas and are easy to avoid by living in small neighborhoods or suburban areas. There are no serious political conflicts or prolonged instability. The general feeling is of a stable society where change happens slowly and predictably. Paraguay's nature is not flashy, but it is everywhere. Large rivers such as the Paraná and Paraguay shape daily life and bring a milder climate to the south. Grasslands, riverside forests, and lakes create open, breathable spaces. For retirees, living close to nature here is not a travel experience, but part of everyday routine. Walking, sitting by the river, or simply enjoying a quiet afternoon. One of the reasons Paraguay is gaining increasing attention from Americans is its tax and residency policies. The country does not tax foreign-sourced income, and the residency process for retirees is relatively accessible. This creates a rare feeling. You are not constantly scrutinized by the system. For many people, that psychological relief matters just as much as the cost of living. The expat community in Paraguay is small, but that is precisely what makes it close-knit. There are no fully segregated expat zones. Most foreigners learn Spanish, get to know their neighbors, and gradually blend into local life. This integration is not always easy, but it brings a sense of belonging, something many Americans realize they have lost back home. Paraguay is not for those seeking maximum convenience or a fast-paced lifestyle, but for retired Americans who want a simple, stable life not dominated by financial pressure. The country offers something very rare: the feeling that life does not need to be complicated to be worth living. And sometimes, that simplicity is the greatest luxury of all. 3. Panama. Bouquet. When life is no longer a difficult equation. Panama is not a place that overwhelms you immediately. It does not promise a life so cheap it feels unrealistic, nor does it wrap itself in the image of a distant paradise that requires sacrificing everything to reach. What makes Panama special for many retired Americans lies in something very ordinary. It is one of the few places where life no longer feels like a difficult equation to solve every month. You do not have to constantly calculate which bill must be paid first, which insurance coverage to cut back on, or whether a visit to the doctor will blow up your budget. Away from the noise of Panama City, the mountain town of Bouquet offers a completely different feeling. Sitting at an elevation of over 200 meters, it has a cool year-round climate, enough for you to open windows to let in the breeze instead of turning on air conditioning. Mornings begin slowly with light mist and fresh air. Afternoons pass gently under soft sunlight. There is no pressure to do something worthwhile with your time, because the rhythm of life in Bouquet is slow enough on its own that you no longer feel left behind. Life in Bouquet is not cheap in the sense of sacrificing quality. It is the kind of easy breathing that many Americans have forgotten after years of living within high-cost systems. Housing outside the town center is spacious enough to allow privacy, quiet enough for rest, and simple enough not to carry invisible expenses. Fresh food is bought at local markets. Small eateries serve meals that are just enough, not elaborate but genuinely nourishing. With rent around $350–450 USD, food costs ranging from $150–300 USD, total monthly budgets usually fall between $500–750 USD. With an average Social Security income, many people realize that for the first time in a very long while, they no longer have to live in a state of financial defensiveness. Healthcare is where Panama makes a decisive difference. For many Americans, the greatest fear of retirement is not lack of spending money, but the feeling of helplessness in the face of healthcare costs. In Panama, especially in major medical centers like David or Panama City, private healthcare is modern and accessible. Many doctors are trained in the United States or Europe, communicate clearly, and most importantly, medical visits no longer feel like a stressful financial decision. For many people, that feeling alone is enough to bring daily peace of mind. Safety in Bouquet does not come from complex security measures, but from the structure of a small community. People are used to seeing one another every day, greeting each other on the street, and foreigners who live quietly are often quickly accepted as part of the town. Of course, life here is not perfect. Internet can be slow at times. Services are not always as fast as in the US, and patience is a skill that must be relearned. But in return, that slower pace brings a rare sense of mental safety. The nature around Bouquet is not flashy, but enduring. Green forests, hills, and coffee plantations create a landscape that makes people want to step outside every day, even if only for a short walk. Many retired Americans say they no longer need a vacation because daily life itself is enough to restore energy. This is not a place to escape, but a place to pause. Legally, Panama seems to understand the mindset of foreign retirees very well. The Pensionado Visa program, along with a policy of exempting foreign-sourced income from taxes, creates a rare sense of stability. You do not have to constantly worry that laws will change in a way that causes your plans to collapse. For many Americans, that alone is enough for Panama to rise above many other options. The expat community in Boquete is not loud or flashy, but it is close enough that newcomers do not feel lost. In the comments of a video about Panama, someone once wrote, "I didn't move here to save money. I moved here because for the first time, life feels manageable again." That sentence is not just a personal feeling, but something many people quietly think about as they sit on a porch in Boquete on a calm afternoon. Panama, and Boquete in particular, does not promise to make you richer, but it offers something many Americans have lost in the pursuit of financial stability: the feeling of being in control of their own lives. No need to give up everything familiar. No need for extreme risk. Just slowing down a little. And sometimes, at this stage of life, that is already enough. 2. Thailand raises a question that makes many retired Americans pause. If a calm life, well cared for and not overly expensive, is entirely possible, then why have we become accustomed to living under constant stress? For many people, Thailand is not a place to pinch every penny, but a place where they no longer have to live in a state of financial defense. In towns away from major centers such as Chiang Mai or Hua Hin, the pace of life naturally slows. Mornings do not begin with car horns or packed schedules, but with small cafes, quiet parks, and the feeling of not being pushed by anyone. People take time to walk, to talk, and to let their bodies adjust to a different rhythm, one no longer dictated by the pressure to optimize everything. The cost of living here is low enough for retirees to breathe more easily, but not so low that quality must be sacrificed. A simple, clean apartment in a quiet residential area typically costs around $300–400 USD. Utilities and internet are reasonably priced, and meals are mostly sourced from local markets or small eateries. When basic expenses are added together, total monthly spending often comes in around 1,000 USD, enough for a stable life. Not luxurious, but not lacking. For many people living on Social Security, this creates a sense of reassurance they have not felt in a long time. What keeps Americans tied to Thailand long-term is not only the cost, but the healthcare system. Private hospitals in Chiang Mai or Bangkok are high quality. Doctors speak good English, procedures are clear, and attitudes are gentle. The feeling of walking into a hospital here is completely different. Not anxiety about bills, but trust that you will be treated with care. With appropriate health insurance, many retirees feel more at ease than they ever did in the United States. Personal safety in areas popular with foreigners is generally quite good. Life is calm, serious violence is rare, and Buddhist culture encourages gentleness and avoidance of confrontation. If small frictions occur, they usually come from cultural differences rather than real danger. Nature and climate also contribute to long-term appeal. The north is cooler, with more greenery and hills, while coastal towns offer a year-round resort-like feeling. People live closer to nature, spend more time outdoors, and are less confined to enclosed spaces. Thailand does not promise a glamorous life, but it offers something many Americans only realize after experiencing it: the feeling of living within a system that does not constantly push you into anxiety. And in retirement, sometimes the most valuable thing is not having more, but having less. Less stress, less pressure, allowing life to return to its natural rhythm. 1. Bolivia drew international attention in 2019 when its government implemented a nationwide free public healthcare system, even though it remains one of the poorest countries in South America. That decision did not come from abundance, but from a clear social choice, placing human access ahead of growth speed. For many retired Americans, this story often sparks an unavoidable thought. If a low-income country can do this, then why are the costs of living and healthcare in the United States becoming increasingly heavy? Bolivia does not impress at first glance. No famous beaches, no luxury resorts. But for those patient enough to stay, the country gradually reveals a rare advantage, allowing people to live slowly without constantly worrying about money. In highland cities such as Sucre or Cochabamba, the pace of life is so steady that it feels almost unchanged over many years. Little showy consumption, little pressure to upgrade life. Low living costs are easy to notice. But what surprises many Americans more is the accompanying sense of mental relief. Housing outside the center is quiet and does not come with the familiar hidden expenses. Food is bought at local markets. Meals are simple but fresh. When basic costs are added together, many people realize that with around 801,000 USD per month, they can live stably without second-guessing every spending decision. This is not a luxurious life, but it is a life that is not suffocating. Healthcare in Bolivia is still limited, but practical and accessible. Public hospitals are sufficient for basic care, while private clinics in larger cities offer low costs and short waiting times. Medical visits rarely become a stressful financial decision. Many doctors are trained in neighboring countries or Europe, with a cautious approach to treatment. Bolivia is better suited for those with relatively stable health, rather than for people who require frequent high-tech care. In terms of safety, Bolivia is relatively peaceful compared to many other South American countries. Serious crime is not common. The main risks are pickpocketing in crowded areas. In smaller cities, life moves slowly with little friction, suiting older adults who want to avoid social stress. Nature is an inseparable part of life here. The altitude brings a cool, year-round climate in many regions, with comfortable days and chilly nights. The Andes, Lake Titicaca, and the Uyuni salt flats are not only beautiful, but also provide a sense of balance for those accustomed to highly urbanized environments. Bolivia does not offer a flashy retirement visa program. The residency path is slow and requires patience, but for that same reason, the expat community is small, quiet, and tends to truly integrate. There are few closed-off expat enclaves. Many people learn Spanish, befriend neighbors, and become part of local life. Bolivia is not for everyone, but for a small group of retired Americans willing to trade speed for stability, it offers something very rare: the feeling of living within a system that does not constantly demand more from you. And sometimes, that alone is enough to stay. Retirement does not have to be a period of shrinking life, nor a time spent worrying about costs. For many Americans, changing where they live has opened up another possibility: a simpler life, but one that feels lighter and more self-directed. Not because they have more money, but because they are no longer forced to spend so much on things that are not truly necessary. The places mentioned in this article do not promise perfection or maximum convenience, but they offer something very rare: the feeling that life is serving people, not the other way around. And sometimes, at this stage of life, the most valuable place is not the one that gives you more, but the one that asks less so you can be at peace. If you are standing at the threshold of retirement, perhaps the most important question is no longer how much you have earned, but how you want to live the years you have left.